deny myself and follow thee. 'Cause the things of this world, I'm leaving. So help me to see you are all I need.
Jesus said, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another."
To live is Christ, to die is gain. Not by works, nor gold obtained, but only by His grace. This Father's love to send His Son has shed His blood to make us one. There is no other love. To you be the glory and praise. Through you we are holy, we are saved. So Jesus, my cross I have taken, and deny myself and follow thee. 'Cause the things of this world, I'm leaving. So help me to see you are all I need.
It's so cool because any little seed that's planted within these people, God could take care of the rest of it.
All right, sing this out, proclaim this tonight.
I saw God working in all different kinds of ways. I also saw Him changing the hearts of the kids, using His Holy Spirit to use us to give His word. It just really hit home with me. What we're doing here is super important. We don't only do that in Mexico, we need to do that everywhere else. We really are the body working together and being sent.
To Jesus, my cross I have taken, and deny myself and follow thee. Yeah. 'Cause the things of this world, I'm leaving. So help me to see you are all I need. So Jesus, my cross I have taken, and deny myself and follow thee. Yeah. 'Cause the things of this world, I'm leaving. So help me to see you are all I need.
I got to go down to Mexico and teach kids about Jesus, and it was pretty awesome.
Good morning. Welcome to Mission Sunday. That was from a couple of years ago, so some of the people that are in it look a little older than they were. You might notice, Mr. Smith. Other people too. It's great to have everybody here together. We decided this year to bring Mission Sunday back into the church service time because we feel it's hugely important for the entire congregation to be involved. It's such a part of the mission of who we are here at Word of Life. And it seems early to start talking about Mexico, but it's not, because it takes a lot of planning. And on that note, I bring greetings from Pastor Mark Johansson. I spoke with him briefly on Friday morning, and he says hi. Anyway, and in just a few minutes, we are going to take up an offering, so I want you to be prepared for that. And this morning's offering is going to go directly towards the Mexico Missions Fund, to be determined at a later date, whether it's going to be for helping send kids or whether it's going to be helping with the things that they'll have going on down there as far as building projects and things. So I want you to be prepared for that. If you do write a check, you can just write in the memo section Mexico, and we'll get it. If you're visiting with us, please feel free to participate if you want to, but don't feel that you need to. In just a minute, I'm going to have Steve Smith going to come up and share a testimony too about a time down in Mexico as well. Some things that practically that are good to know already. The upcoming Mexico missions trip is going to be April 6th through 13th of 2017, so it's certainly not too early to be planning. Some things, if this is your first time going, or if you know your passport's going to be expiring, it's not too early to start planning on getting your passport ready for that. And the application is due by January 18th of next year, along with a copy of that passport. You can go on the Borderless Midwest website to look at costs and the full schedule. There's also a training time that's going to happen in February 19th and 20th. There'll be more details to follow on that as Pastor Mark gets information on that. But looks like they had a lot of fun, and I know the testimonies we've heard in the past and seen is that it is a very good time to go and outreach just across the border, just south of Arizona, and reach out to those kids. So if you're interested at all, go ahead and get started in that application process, and I'm sure there's going to be more meetings to come on that. So at this time, I'll ask the ushers to come forward. We'll go ahead and take an offering, and as they're coming up, I'll go ahead and invite Steve Smith to come up as well, and he's going to share with us about some of his adventures in Mexico.
Hi, thank you. Jason asked me to share a story today with you about one of the things that happened while we were in Mexico. We've been going for 5 years, and I want to go back to the very first time we went down. We were fortunate to see a baptism at Silva, the main site where we served the first year. And there they don't do their baptisms in a church up here on the stage. They do their baptisms in the canal that's out in the open behind their church. And we were witnessing that baptism, which was an awesome event. And I was watching the baptism, and a gentleman approached along the canal and stopped a ways away by himself and just sat there watching us. And I felt nudged by God, I think, to go over and start talking to him. And I sat down with him, and his name was Raul. And we started talking, and he told me he'd grown up in a Seventh-day Adventist home, but he wasn't serving God. In fact, he was at that moment a drug addict and working for a drug dealer, and his life was just a mess, a very big mess. And so we talked, and I invited him to come back, to come, talk to him a little about God. I was trying to think of what words should I say. God, I was praying while I was talking to him, what should I say? And the next day, Raul came back to one of the day events, and he came in. He had his kids. His kids were coming to the VBS. And I sat with him, was talking with him, and we'd given one of his kids a children's Bible in Spanish. And I gave it to Raul, and he says, I don't know how to read. He couldn't read. And so we gave it to his son, and his son started, reading the Bible, was going through, couldn't read real well, but he was going through reading the Bible to his dad. So that was year one. And we left, and I just had this burden on my heart for Raul. Year two, we came back, and Raul came by the church. His wife, Claudia, came to women's ministry, which Karen does. And I started talking to Claudia, and she was ready to be done with him. They have 6 children. And at that point, the youngest were twins. I don't remember what their ages were. Maybe 2? Yeah, little kids. And I was just, this is terrible. And so we talked with the pastor, Pastor Mario, about Raul. Raul came. He would come during the days and come by and say hi and so forth. So we started talking to Pastor Mario, and Raul agreed that he was willing to go to a drug treatment center. So Pastor Mario was willing to take him. When we left the site, it was the last day we left on the bus ride, we collected money from the kids. to help to give towards his family, because one of Raul's big concerns was he was the main breadwinner, which was maybe $6 a day for his family, and if he left and went to a drug center, he wouldn't be able to support his family. So we passed the hat in the bus, and I don't remember how much money we raised. It was like $180 or something, which was a lot of money when you're making $6 a day, and gave it to the people there in charge at the main site to give to the pastor in Silva, to give to Raul's family. Well, when we got back here to the States, I contacted Mario to see how it was going and found out that Raul had lasted, I think it was 2 days in the drug center and had left, split. So I don't remember if it was the next year or the year following, because there was a year there where I don't think Raul came by. Or if he came by, it was towards the end. I think it was the day before we left, and he asked for some money from me. I think it was, he asked for like $5 or $10 because his family was in need. And I was a little hesitant, not because I didn't want to give him the money, but because I just didn't want to have this dependency thing develop. But I gave him the money, and he said it was just a loan. The next day he'd come back and repay me. Well, the next day he didn't show up. And I remember telling his wife, I said, if Raul's not showing up because he feels embarrassed about the money, I don't care about the money. I'd love to see Raul again. So year four we went back, and I went over to Raul's house. I found out where Raul lived. We went down there when he were handing out the balloons, inviting kids, and Raul was home. He came out, and he told me he had turned his life around, or God has turned his life around. He was following Christ. He'd left drugs, and he took me over to his family's home, his parents' home, introduced me to his family, which was awesome, and got to talk with them. And honestly, I was a little bit nervous. Is he really off the drugs? This guy he was heavily involved in drugs, in the drug life. And last year we went back, and Raul came over, not because I went looking for him. He came, and he came every day. He would come and sit and talk. The last day we were there, I was looking this morning desperately for pictures. I couldn't find the pictures, but there's a picture of Raul with his family, and it's unbelievable, the joy. I watched him interact with his family this last time, and he's being a dad. It's amazing how God has transformed his life. And as I was thinking about the story, as I was talking with Jason this week, I thought of my willingness to go talk to Raul. Partly was because I was in Mexico. I was on a missions trip, right? And on a missions trip, you're supposed to be reaching out to people. That's what you do on a missions trip. What I thought about this week was, why don't I do that more often here? Why am I not that more bold here? Just because I have my cowboy hat on, and I'm in Mexico, and I'm with a missions group, why don't I do the same thing in Le Sueur, right here? Because there's people in this community that are hurting, that need Jesus, that need the message. And it's not about me when, Joanna, you were talking about the Begin conference, when you feel inadequate. Every time I go to Mexico, I feel inadequate. I feel inadequate to bring the gospel. We all are, of ourselves we are, but it's God's message. So anyway, that's my story.
Good morning, everyone. I think everyone knows me and my family. I'm Owen, and I've been asked to come up this morning and share a story about a particularly difficult and I guess ultimately kind of wonderful point in my life. I'm not a public speaker, so excuse me, I'm going to grab some water here. Hope I can use that. Pastor Lang, sorry, hope that's okay. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately, but I think a lot of you have heard this story recently. Strangely, what I'm going to share with you, I've shared with certain members of the church in the past 2 weeks, so if you've heard this before, deal with it, I don't know. So, what I want to share is just, again, this really extraordinary time in my life that's led me to be here. And I'm not up here often, So I would just like to say, just want to thank this church and all of you, because I don't know how to express this really sincerely that it comes across this way, but it's so encouraging for me to come here and see all of you and to see how welcoming you are to my family, myself. So just thank you, and it says something about the culture of this church, so thanks so much. It sounds funny to start. I'm not going to tell you my whole life story, but just to give you an idea of what this story is about, if you don't mind, I'm going to start a little bit of my life history, I guess. Just want to say that I was born into a family in Southern California, just a really dysfunctional family, broken family, I should say. Father left when I was 18 months old. No child support there, so my mother, who's just a wonderful lady, very introverted though, she was working 6-7 days a week, and so I was at home alone a lot. I have an older brother, 7 years older, so you can imagine he was off doing his own thing. So I was really raised where I was independent a lot as a young kid, and so I gravitated to friends a whole lot, and not that that's bad. Fortunately, I realize now God was good enough. He put me in with a group of kids that were not troublemakers. We were idiots. We just moving forward a bit into high school, I was just horrible. I was essentially not a student, and really came very close to not graduating high school. So, by the time I finally did graduate from high school, essentially my life was, fairly independent from my perspective. And, what is reality? Reality is just, I'm going to do what I need to do to, whatever, survive, and life is about having fun, and it seemed like it sounds good to me. Horrible student. I'm never going to school again, so I left California, went to Colorado for a while, and earned like $5 an hour at some ski resort. So I decided, I'm going to try college for a while. Returned to California. Any of you ever heard of California Institute of Technology? It's a huge, big, prestigious school. I didn't go to school there. Across the street, though, was Pasadena City College, 2-year school. So I was there for 4 years, and it was great. I got, holy moly, I really gravitated towards the sciences, geology. I was studying all sorts of amazing things, really learning about things that high school, I didn't learn any of it. So a lot of origin of Earth, origin of life to some degree, and also the humanities, English literature, philosophy, some religious studies, which, am I killing my microphone? Sorry. Some religious studies from which I took the idea that really we're all after the same thing, no matter what religion. The goal is the same, just the means by which you pursue it, and that seemed encouraging and very nice. So there we go. I finally transferred to a university, graduated 7 years. I should be a doctor, really, but anyway, so there I am. And during that time, I returned to Colorado, met a girl from Northfield, Robin, and so right after college we married, and here we are in Minnesota, and it's great, and we're going to go work, and so that I thought would be pretty much the end of the story. But then, I guess I just want to say at this point, really my understanding of reality is, again, pretty shallow, and it's kind of based on me not using a microphone. Okay. Closer? Okay. Now I can hear myself. I don't have much of a foundation, as you can see, just in what's truth and what's good or bad. And at this point, I really haven't felt a need for that, because life isn't horrible, and I'm moving along, and things seem to be good. And I figured that would be the way that things would continue. But those of you that are old enough to remember this, then Rob and I were married in June of 2001, moved to Minnesota, And a few months later, September 11th, 2001, and that was for everybody, right? I mean, it's nothing original here. It wasn't like I really suffered that day and you didn't. Boy, that day really, really scared me, right? I mean, if you're going to do this, what else are you going to do? Really frightening time. And so I can imagine there may be people in this room where you respond with, a lot of sympathy for families that died. 3,000 people, right? Either in buildings or in airplanes. And we're not talking about a natural disaster. Certainly there are worse natural disasters. But this is people setting out to destroy other people. And that really sounds stupid to say that. It really troubled me. It was really just a difficult time. And then when news comes out and the blame is placed on religious extremists, that was not to say heartbreaking, that was so disappointing and so truthfully angering. That's the way I responded, with a lot of anger. Not outwardly. If you had met me, I'm not stomping around, with crowbars or anything like that. But I felt like I have to do something, and so my response was, I'm intelligent, right? I just graduated from college in 7 years, and so I felt like I had this really, because of those 7 years, I had this pretty broad background, humanities and science, and I thought I can help here, and I can help by helping others recognize that religion is a fallacy. It leads to ultimately bad things, and I thought I can really do this. I'm not saying I was totally egotistical and thinking that I'm going to change the world, but I was certainly prideful, thinking that I can figure this out and help others that are having to suffer through, I guess, what we're all here for today. I mean, that was really my thought. So I did. I set out, and I did a lot of 3,000 people. I feel like I was really motivated, and I set out to find the best thinkers of religion and the best atheists. And religion's so broad, I had to start somewhere, and I did. I looked into Islam, and I just didn't find the apologetic arguments there that I felt like I needed to work against. So it seemed like a pretty natural place. Again, from my background, all religions, same things, everyone's going for the same thing. It felt right to me to then start really with Christianity, and it seemed easy. It's crazy, right? Guy died and resurrected, and what are you guys doing? It seemed like a really easy place, and I knew a lot of apologetics, so something I could really bite my teeth into, because I knew that the arguments that are saying this is the truth, I was determined enough, and I thought I was smart enough that I can blow this out of the water, and it seemed straightforward, and that was, and I'm not trying to say yay me, but years, and I really looked into it, and that was the goal, and I was really disappointed right away, because it seemed clear that I wasn't finding what I was looking for. From what I was picking up, the best thinkers on both sides, the best thinkers on the side against religion generally, Christianity specifically, right away I was finding these seem hollow arguments, or just emotional arguments. I wanted logic. I wanted something I could take to you and to say, look, it's obvious, look at this. Unfortunately, you've missed the mark, and something I could really point out to any of you to show how you have missed the mark, and how, fortunately, I'm bringing you the truth. That sounds crazy, but that's what I was going for. Again, so that I could help September 11th not happen again in some way. So I set out, and I was just astounded. Remember, I'm dead set on I'm going to prove you all wrong, and I was really amazed how I couldn't find what I thought were sufficient arguments, good arguments, but that were countered so easily, it seemed to me, by Christian apologists. And I dug, and I so I started roughly late 2001, and now we're in 2003, 2004, and it wasn't my full-time job, of course, but it was clear that that there's certainly some foolish thought in the world, and I'm on the side of foolishness. It took a lot of time, but I really did reach the point where I realized I can't do this. The arguments for Christianity were, I'm not going to say foolproof, but just, if I'm going to be honest and weigh the sides, it was clear where truth was. If you just want to weigh probability or whatever the case, it seemed very clear, and it was shocking to me. But by that time, I'd become very familiar, I thought, with how the logic was made, and it certainly changed me. So I thought, all right, if I'm going to follow the truth, and it sounds honorable, I didn't mean it this way, but if I'm going to be true to those 3,000 that died that day, I want to know really what is this about. And so I pursued knowing, is this true? I'm looking at, the historical reliability of the Gospels, the death and resurrection of Christ. What are the motivations of people that are saying this is true? I was overwhelmed. So I thought, if I'm going to follow this, I'm going to go, full bore. And I did all the research I could, and I was changed here, right? So now I'm believing the arguments for Christianity are strong, and I can have faith, small f, in those truths. And so now, again, we're in 2004. I've been looking at this for years, and I think, okay, hey, I believe this stuff. I don't mean to shortchange all of that, but that's ultimately kind of what happened. So I can believe arguments, the historicity of Christ, of Christianity, and then I struggled with a new problem. Am I a Christian now? Right, so things that people say, here's arguments for, if you pick up a book of apologetics, for the most part I'm saying yes, 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 yes. Am I a Christian? And I got to know some people, and I ultimately realized no, just believing those facts doesn't make me a Christian. I don't know who the author was, but someone pointed out something to me that I think was powerful. Just, if you want to know about Christian facts, historical facts, no one in this room, no one on this planet is going to know those facts better than Satan. He knows them all, better than all of us. He doesn't. Truth isn't his problem. It's the desire, for God or not. So, that was eye-opening. Jeez Louise. So how do you become a Christian? What is this? And then I'm looking at churches, and I see people. You come in and you're praising God, you're singing, and you're raising your hands, and okay, I'm up to a point. Logically I can follow you. But what is all this? And you're yay, God, what? That was hard to bridge that also, until I was introduced to a pastor who pointed me back to, I'd read C.S. Lewis, and that was huge, his Mere Christianity, that was huge influence on my thinking about how can you go from, you guys are nuts, to, maybe you've got it right and I've got it wrong. And something that Lewis wrote in Mere Christianity, I think, one of his books, he made the point of if you love something like a movie, or a lot of you are on Facebook. I don't know anything about Facebook, but a lot of you, right? You experience something and you're enthusiastic about it. It's one thing to say, wow, that was a great experience. I really enjoyed that. It's another thing to share that with people, right? We've got book groups, and we've got forums on the internet where people want to share that. That's part of the joy that we feel, and that helped me recognize why you would all come here on Sunday and want to do all of this. And so I wasn't there yet, but ultimately, God was good enough to introduce me to this local pastor. I came in totally, I didn't know the culture, I didn't know anything, and I found out knowing facts doesn't make you a Christian, but God is good enough to me that he did change my heart and made me want to become a part of his community, his church. And it's weird even now. I can think back in an instant to where I was in college and before. And I think, man, it's 180 degrees, and I can laugh and say, if that's how you're going to do it, God, I'm on board, but I don't know why you chose that way. So I guess ultimately my point, I'm going to shut up now so you can get back to what you want to do, but ultimately I would state this. I don't know that there's anyone here that's struggling with the deity of Christ or any ideas where, how much doubt you may have in your life that you're truly struggling with, but I'm certain that you know people that struggle with that, whether you know it or not, and I would want to say that if you're speaking with them, certainly engaging them is important. I think patience, from my perspective, it was most of my life, right? I wasn't knowing God. And I want to say that I hope that my story gives you maybe a bit of hope. Steve, you just mentioned, what do you say to someone that doesn't know Christ? I hope you'd feel free, and I hope maybe this underlines this a bit, feel free that I know that when I talk to you or talk to anybody, I'm not going to change your mind. I don't make Christians, only God can do that. And he has some crazy ways, I guess, of how he's going to, what path he's going to steer you down. So I would have no problem speaking with someone because I feel like I'm off the hook. I'm not doing the hard work. That's God's job. But if I can, share some part of my story or share arguments, the arguments aren't going to make Christians, but God can change their heart, and he may choose apologetics or whatever else. Just steer people to God's word, and he'll do the rest. So thanks for putting up with me for a few minutes. I think the worship team is up next, and I'm sorry I don't know how to use a microphone. I'll try better next time. Thanks, guys.
Receive this blessing. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Go in his peace.